Good afternoon. İyi günler. We have today Taylor Pearson. He's the author of The End of Jobs, Money, Meaning, and Freedom Beyond 9 to 5. And Taylor will be one of the keynote speakers of our HR Summit this fall. And I'm so happy to have Taylor with us. Taylor, so great to have you with us. And I'd like to welcome you with our audience that is in Turkey, mainly HR professionals, and we have also viewers from YouTube and Zoom. And I'd like to talk to you about your book and also make a teaser for your session in the conference. So, and I'd like to start with one question. Why did you want to write this book? That was 2015 when I first came across with your Medium blog, then the book. It was quite unusual and provocative at that time, but it makes a lot of sense today. But what made you write this book?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here. In terms of the book, I think a lot of it came out of my own experience. I had started my career on a fairly traditional career path. Going through college, getting appropriate degrees, applying for the appropriate jobs, and through mostly happenstance and luck, ended up working with a couple sort of non-traditional companies, technology companies based in California. And after having done that for about 4 or 5 years, I sort of realized that a lot of what I had been told about how jobs worked, how careers work, just kind of the way in which one goes about navigating one's career path or one's life as a professional wasn't really it was based on an old paradigm. It was based on how things worked in the 20th century or decades ago. And so, sort of the impetus for me was, I had a lot of friends, people I knew that I felt like were still sort of stuck in that paradigm. They were seeing work through this lens that didn't really work anymore. And so I wanted to sort of, these are the things that I've learned and through my own research about, this is the way in which work is transforming, and this is how sort of individuals and companies can adapt to this new paradigm as opposed to being stuck in the old one.
So that old paradigm probably is led by a value set, primarily security driven. But now I think we're living in a new paradigm, which is led by a new value, which is more freedom. And I think we are seeing almost the clash of two values, security against the freedom, and that's the choice waiting for us. But we are now living in a world where this clash is actually fitting to the theme of the conference, agile or fragile, because when you have the freedom, I think you have the agility with all the risks. But when you choose the security, there's always the risk of being fragile, less independence. I remember your example in the book with kind of two people having the similar aptitudes, similar skills, and one chooses the corporate job and the other chooses the entrepreneurship or his own way, and then the one that chooses the corporate job is finally loses his power or job by someone who's actually he can do it better, with a lower salary somewhere else. We're talking about outsourcing, or we can talk about robotics, where someone who uses robotics can replace someone who doesn't use robotics. So that's fascinating, because that you could see that and at that time. Now I know your book has a lot of focus for the individuals, and we have, of course, individuals attending the conference, but we have most of the people are coming from the corporate environment. So this value transition also has implications for corporate, especially for HR. So what are the possible implications of that shift for companies and HR professionals in order to be able to continue the work on organization development, getting talent, recruitment, and all these things?
Yeah, so I like your, I think you can sort of map this idea of, maybe security and freedom to sort of agility and fragility. And I think, from a company's perspective, the thing I see that happens the most is you have a company that is very, fixated on this, this security part. It's like, this is the way things have been done at this company. This is the way, we have people come in and we put them through this particular training program, and people stay at the company for 10 or 20 years often. And that's the goal, right? We want to bring people in and we want to keep them here for 20 or 25 years, for their whole career. And that's how we've sort of done business in the past. And that's how we want to do things going forward. And I think what that introduces is a lot of fragility. That's actually, by trying to pursue this more secure path, you introduce a lot of fragility. I think one way that happens is you have basically an adverse selection bias, right? So if you're telling people, if you come here, we're not going to help you get another job somewhere else. You're going to be kind of stuck at this. You're going to be in this company. You're going to be on this career track. You're going to attract people that you're probably going to attract, less qualified or less ambitious people, right? One thing I find very fascinating, if you look at sports teams, and I know the most about American football, but it's true in football or soccer as well, is you tend to have these coaching trees, right? You have a really great coach and then a bunch of people that work under him, and they go on to be good coaches, and people work under them, and they go on to be good coaches. But they don't stay forever, right? It's like, so if you look at sort of the best coaches, they tend to have, relatively short tenures of the people that work with them, right? I come, I'm going to learn from this person, and then he's going to help me go on, or she's going to help me go on and get, another position. I think, companies need to think about things more that way. So, what one framework, I like is this idea of a tour of duty. In the same way you'd have some companies say, we're not hiring you for, forever indefinitely and things are going to go on forever. It's like, we'll bring you in and we have, this 3-year tour of duty. We bring you in because we need help in this aspect of the business. We need to improve our visual branding, and you're a great brand person, which you come in and do this kind of thing. And you're almost setting an expiration date. So we want you to accomplish this. If you accomplish this, it's going to achieve these things for the company. It's going to achieve these things for you. And then we can reevaluate and see where things are from there. So does it make sense for you to do another tour of duty at the company? Is there something else that you're excited about that's a good fit for the company that you want to do? Or does it make sense for you to sort of move on to some other opportunity because that's a better fit for you at that stage? And so I think that solves a lot of that. I think you can attract more qualified, more ambitious people. And I see how this can be a springboard to sort of bigger and better things for me, as opposed to I'm going to be stuck in this position for 20 years and there's not enough room for growth.
Wonderful. You reminded me. I love your idea of expiration date. It reminded me one of my mentors' idea about death. He would say, "There's nothing more generative and life-giving than the idea of death." So because when we know we're going to die, we try to be more productive and more alive and everything. And then when we also bring that to the jobs with an expiration date, that gives a lot of dynamism, creativity to the jobs. That's amazing. So so how can organizations adapt, and HR teams adapt to this new paradigm? Because they are built around jobs with no expiration dates. They are built around much more static understanding of the relationship with the employee. But we are suffering from that in the pandemic, and with any crisis, we're suffering from that as a company. So that's also good thing for the companies. But how can they make that transition, the companies itself, towards this new paradigm?
Yeah, I think it's not, I don't think it's not like the contracts need to be written in a different way or on the legal front. I think it's just how you approach sort of the hiring process and the recruitment process. It's a different pitch when you're going out to someone and you're saying, we're going to hire you in this position forever, to having some defined tour of duty where you have, And I think a big part of that is being able to show this position in your company as an opportunity that could take them on to bigger and better things, whether that's at the company or elsewhere, and being open to that. And I think if you look at, I talked about in the context of sports or athletics and coaching, you can see many companies sort of there's these so-called business mafias. The PayPal mafia is one that people talk about, and basically all of the top 20 people at PayPal went on to be very successful in other ways. Elon Musk was there, who's obviously gone and bring things in space. The YouTube founders were there. Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn founder, was there. So it wasn't like they were all sort of stuck there and that was all they were going to do. It was they all sort of came together and they had this opportunity. Those people that weren't the founders of PayPal, Reid Hoffman, for example, who went on to found LinkedIn, and obviously he's been very successful since. He saw that as an opportunity and a springboard to other things, and that because of that, I think you're able to recruit or attract someone like with that sort of quality and that sort of ability. So I think it's mostly just in terms of how you position, and I think obviously a key part of that is getting buy-in from management in terms of this new approach, right? And I think that's the hardest part. There's a cultural shift that has to happen to some extent, where you're sort of acknowledging that we're going to try approaching it in this new way, and that's going to introduce some risk, or it's going to introduce some unknowns, because that's not the way we've historically done it. But again, to your point about security and fragility, I think sort of clinging to that model, or clinging to sort of something that's becoming harder and harder is actually riskier than trying this new thing, right? And you can look back, there's lots of statistics. In the S&P 500 index, I think the average tenure of a company on there is something like 25 years, right? And so these companies, every year companies fall off, right? Companies slowly decay, and the only way companies are able to stay successful over a long period of time is they have to dramatically change their business model, how they go about doing business, and all that sort of stuff. I think the story of Intel, the microchip manufacturer under Andy Grove, he basically, over a 3-year period, they completely changed their business model in the late 1980s, because they saw that Japanese manufacturers were going to come in and were going to basically undercut them, and they were going to go out of business. And so they had a new business model, new product line, new organizational thing, and that must have looked risky at the time. I'm sure many people that saw into, that's crazy, you're going to change this whole business model. But it was actually the safer option in a lot of ways, right? By choosing not to do that, he knew he was choosing obsolescence. He knew they were going to be defeated by their competitors, and they were going to go out of business, or they were going to serve in a much reduced capacity. I think this is the same thing, right? You have to adapt to these new paradigms, the new way the macro environment looks, because the alternative is just obsolescence.
Yes, I picked up a number of things. First of all, good news. When you strive to get this kind of people and bring them together, that becomes even more generative, and they create a different culture. They breed new types of people and new ideas, new projects that can even go beyond the organization, with the example of PayPal. I think that's fascinating. But the second thing I'm picking is also this transition is really fundamental, the way we look at organizations, because I believe what I'm going to say as a perspective is a fallacy, but we lived with this fallacy for a long time, which is we thought as we were managers and we were in control of things, in control of people, which is not true. But we are now moving into an era where we are in charge but not in control, and accepting that as a fact with agile practices, freelancing, gig economy, in every level. And this shift, this mind shift, this culture shift is actually quite fundamental. So we talked about in the other webinars, HR's new role in the organizations, and it's shifting towards more like an organizational change agent, a culture change agent, rather than a process owner or operational role. So I'm hearing the same thing from you, this as an implication, there should be this shift, and HR then should assume this role of leading, facilitating, orchestrating that shift. So that's that's exciting for HR people. Actually, as I want to, I wanted to go to the next question I have, but there's a question coming up. The question our viewers is asking about the end of jobs, and actually a question that I have also heard in many places. Do you believe that in the midst of all of that, do you believe that the robots and artificial intelligence will take our jobs away in the near future? This is the question coming from our one of our viewers in the broadcast.
Yeah, I think you know, when I wrote the book in 2015, I think the trend that was more sort of in my mind that seemed more probably just kind of, you know, some form of sort of globalization and outsourcing, right? There are just so many roles now when you're, you know, most roles are many roles that are dealing with, you're knowledge workers, you're working with information, you're moving things around in a spreadsheet, you're moving things around in a Word document or whatever it is. And, you know, spreadsheets work just as well in Turkey as France, as South Africa, as wherever, right? You know, it's, and so you have this ability to move a lot of those roles to other places, and that makes the sort of market for them more competitive, which can be a real advantage to companies, right? Your hiring pool goes from sort of the immediate geographic area around where your business is located to, you know, for certain roles potentially, you know, the rest of the world. And so I think that, you know, that continues, I think, to be probably the largest thing. You know, in terms of, I guess, artificial intelligence more than robotics, to me seems like a potential issue. I think from what I've seen, the AI companies I've worked with and talked with, you know, the distinction most people make is between something like narrow artificial intelligence and general artificial intelligence. So, you know, narrow is doing some very specific dogs in photos kind of thing, and you know, narrow artificial intelligence can work very good in lots of different environments, and there's lots of sort of business process roles for that. But, you know, most sort of knowledge work or higher level roles are not going to be, you know, you can't run narrow artificial intelligence. You need sort of a much more general thing. But I think, you know, of a more general artificial intelligence is certainly possible. I don't know if there's a recent technology that's come out called GPT-3 that was released by OpenAI, I think in the last couple of months, which is, you know, by far the most impressive artificial intelligence system that I've ever seen. You know, you could ask it to write a news article, and it's, you know, very difficult to tell that it was written by an artificial intelligence as opposed to a human. So I think that the hard part with artificial intelligence is it seems very limited until it seems very powerful, and that change happens very quickly. And, you know, it's very hard. Does that happen, you know, next year, the year after? You know, probably not. But does it happen 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 25, 30 years from now? You know, it's very hard to say.
So again, I think the answer to the question makes us think, well, in the near future, definitely, you know, people who can communicate with machines, who can work with machines, will be replacing our jobs. But in a foreseeable future, you are anticipating with the rise of technologies of artificial general intelligence, we will be seeing lots of very high level tasks being done by the machines. And we are already seeing signs of it, as you said, like as authorship, as being a composer. We have now music composed by AI. It's almost like commodity, art, and lots of other things. So yeah, so your answer is yes, and also so I'm also hearing this as an invitation, be into it so that your skills are augmented in a way.
I think I like the analogy of, you know, there's a type of chess called freestyle chess where you're playing with the computer, right? You have the computer next to you and you can run simulations on the computer, and then the human is making them move. And freestyle chess players tend to be the best. They're better than the human alone, and they're better than the machine alone. So I think, I often refer to these people sort of like cyborgs. Like I think a lot of people are going to be, more like cyborgs, right? You're going to be sort of part, our roles in companies will be more like cyborgs. It's, part machine, part human. And that combination is better than either alone.
Yes, I have another question. In the midst of all of that, what would you suggest for me as an HR professional to develop myself? So yeah, how do I adapt? That's how I understand the question. How do I adapt to this? What kind of skills and learning ambitions should I have as an HR professional to adapt to that?
It's a good question. I mean, I think, sort of general things like just understanding what the major trends are in the field, where things are going. I think a big part of it for every role, HR included, is taking a more entrepreneurial role, right? You mentioned in the book, I sort of have a story of two different professionals of kind of the same aptitude and them taking different approaches to their careers and how that ends differently. And I think you talked about this idea of HR moving from a process management division to a change management division. And I think the reality is, a process management is much easier to sort of outsource or replace and treat as a cost center and sort of reduce as much as possible. Whereas this much more sort of entrepreneurial change management approach is much harder to replace. It's much more intrinsically valuable to the company. So I think thinking about ways to have that more entrepreneurial approach of like not just saying this, we need to hire 20. Our quota is 20 people for these roles over the next 3 months. But are there ways in which we could innovate on how we're doing the hiring process? We normally post it on these job boards or go to these career fairs or whatever. But here are these other opportunities. Here's we normally write the job posts in these ways. Or what if we position them in this way? Something like introducing this idea of like tours of duty. I think there's lots of ways to take an entrepreneurial approach to HR and add a lot of value.
There's actually one other question that lots of HR people are coming from social sciences, and we are seeing more and more of technology in our lives. It looks very hard to me to kind of catch up with this technology because, like, for example, I'm coming from sociology field. People are coming from psychology and everything. So how do we bridge this gap? I think that's the question. That on one side it's more technical technology, and on the other side people are coming from an history of more social sciences. So what is there a way that we can or learn if we're coming from social sciences in the world of this technology?
Sure. I mean, I think there's an intersection, right? I studied history in school. I don't have any particular technology credentials, and nor I'm not a programmer or developer. I can't write code. I couldn't look at an AI program and tell you if it was good or bad or how it worked or something. But you can still read about. I can talk to people that are in the field. I can read about what's going on in the field and hear people that are more informed say, well, it could do this type of work, but not this type of work. Or this seems like something we could achieve in the next 12 to 24 months, and this is probably something that's 20 years off. So I think just there's that implication of there's the hard science and then there's the applied science, right? And really for most professionals, what they're interested in is the applied science. It's okay, like where does the sort of rubber meet the road? How is this actually implemented? And I think there's lots of great books of people that speak about that. You can see in terms of what's happening in the field, and I think generally looking to other companies, right? There's lots of other people, HR professionals around the world that are doing the same thing, right? They're trying to figure out what these trends are and how things are coming and how people are adapting. So I think there's a lot to be learned just by seeing other companies that are already monitoring these things and saying, you know, can we just take things that they're doing that seem to be working and bring them to our company?
Yes. Yeah, you reminded me two stories. Maybe I can contribute with that. One is we're running a university running tech degrees, and actually the head of our curriculum is coming from English teaching, so completely social science, and she's designing AI courses, data science programs, cybersecurity, software engineering, only these programs. So she's kind of the connoisseur and designer and curator of these programs. And that when I remembered that example, I remembered something that again, one of my mentors had told me in the past, that he would say, if I had asked this question, he would say, you don't have to be a chicken to understand what a good egg is. So we don't have to be, so we can always understand, right, be connoisseur of technology, curator of technology, but we don't have to be a techie. I mean, sorry about the analogy, but that is that's something that I think it's still an opportunity for us. So I also heard that from you. We can find an intersection, find a new role for us between the social sciences, our skills, and the technology, where we can become a connoisseur of high tech talent. I mean, we don't have to be a tech talent, but we can be a curator of the best talent in technology. That's something totally different. That doesn't require writing a code. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and I think that's right.
Wonderful. Well, I think we've come the end of our conversation. So what are the final things, final, like with one or two tips that you would like to leave our audience until we meet again in the conference? You know, that could be, you know, reading your book or reading this book or try this or something. Would you have some kind of practical tips that you would like to give them? It can be one or two or maximum three.
Sure. I think, you know, coming back to where we sort of started the conversation, I think thinking about your sort of how HR is structured and the idea of this tours of duty, having, you know, how can we restructure things where you have people come in and they have sort of, you know, defined goals, defined time periods. And I think that's a way, you know, I think that's both adaptive to sort of what's going on now, but, you know, can also make people a lot more productive, right? It's not, you're just not coming in and managing these processes. We need you to come in and make a change in the organization. So I would encourage everyone to think about how that might apply to their organization.
Wonderful. So I think we will hope that our audience will be experimenting with this idea of the expiry time, and then we will hear more of your practice, more of your ideas in the conference. Heather, thank you so much, and we thank you. You are also viewers on YouTube and Zoom being with us, and we look forward to welcoming you in the conference.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good day.